TikTok. It's time to rock, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Sunday show. It's my pleasure to be here. We've changed things around, ladies and gentlemen. If you've got a keen eye, you'll notice that I'm not there, over there, there.
I don't know what you've done.
Over there. I'm not over there.
Look, can't you be over there?
Someone else is over there. So we've got a new regime. What we're going to do is whoever's presenting the album is going to get that position. And then the person going second is going to get the meat and the sandwich, which is the rock professor.
Mm-hmm.
And then the tail ender, the tail gunner.
Tail end Charlie.
It's weird because now the layout, we're all across, but you're sitting a tiny bit lower, Andrew, than the rest of us.
Yeah.
Well, you know, see, we're all sort of going. See, you're slightly above.
I think you need to come up. We can't have this kind of. You know, I look down on him because this is one for the teenagers. I look up to him because he is upper class. I look down to him because he is working class. And I bet nobody here knows what that is.
We know it. Okay, how about that? Are you happy now?
What about the triangle? Now we used to have like two at the top and one
still lower. You're still lower.
Yeah.
I know my place.
What about that?
There you go.
Happy
Very
now?
nice. That's better. Yes. The three amigos.
Awesome.
Yes.
One thing that hasn't changed, ladies and gentlemen, this hasn't changed.
Yes, it has. Oh God.
That hasn't changed.
That's enough of that.
You got to isolate yourself now, Andrew, to make it fair.
Okay, all right, I'll make.
Yes.
That hasn't changed either. Look, not a old.
The bearded wonder.
TikTok time to rock, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Sunday show. It's always our pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Great show yesterday, Andrew, with Michael. Yeah. That was a great show.
Yeah. Back on the channel.
Yeah, it was good to see Michael in there. It was a great
Hell
show.
of a nice guy, isn't he? A nice guy. Good to see that he's excited. And as I mentioned live, guys, when we were going through the introduction part there, you know, you hear a song, you think of an album. It always reminds you of an album, an event, a person, something that's happened in your life. Unfortunately, or fortunately for Michael, I suppose, but unfortunately for me, every time I think of 24 Nights now, I think of Michael.
Synonymous with.
Yeah.
One of the best things was he plays. You know, he gets the old guitar out and plays. It's really cool. We didn't get busted for it either. Well done.
No, we didn't, and I suppose that's always going to be a tricky thing. And I'm glad you mentioned that, Simon, because that's one of the things. That's why we don't do that. And I've mentioned this before, I think, and we should make it clear. We don't do that on this channel because depending on what the song is and the album and the record company, they could completely block a 2-hour or 3-hour show. So that's one of the that's the reason why we refuse to play samples and play, because what's the point in us doing all this work, Brad, if we have to edit half of it out or a third of it out? And we've had to do that in the past, and it's just nuts.
It's
mayhem.
painful.
I think you had a problem with the Christmas show, didn't you, Andrew? You had a problem with that. Was it the Christmas?
Yeah. So
we played some Yngwie Malmsteen jokes, and they didn't think it was funny.
No, that's a bummer, because they were funny jokes too. They were very funny.
Oh, they were funny. Parody stuff,
and we can't even play that on our community, on our what do you call it when people sign up to your website? Our patrons page.
Oh, patrons.
So, yeah. We can't even play it on there.
Really?
Well,
No.
Even I suppose the only way to do it is have as a private video and then send people a link. can you? That's the only way of doing it.
Can't even do that. I've tried doing that. Only I can play
Really?
it. Yes.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. Blimey.
So and remember, I think we did one other show. Bam, Black, Bruce Baker, Moore.
And more.
Remember we
yeah,
did that,
BBM.
and we
Yeah.
played some music, and I think
Yeah,
I had to
we
go
did.
through and edit that, and that took like about 12 hours to edit it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Loads of time.
Plus, it kind of all that work you go to doing it and stuff. It's it's not worth it, Andrew. You know.
Look, if we were just doing a video channel, like if you were just getting on, Brad, and you were going to play music, you're either going to get it played or it's going to get blocked. But because we're getting together and we're talking and we're going to be doing some analysis and research and stuff like that, from that point of view, it's just we don't do it. So if anyone is curious and wonders why we don't do it often, that is the reason why we don't do it.
Yeah.
I've actually
Just creates havoc and work.
done a couple of things on my YouTube channel that that blocked. I had a Prince tribute I played, and that got anything from that. And I've forgotten what else. Something else, like it was another Prince thing I did, I think, and that got blocked as well, unfortunately. But the same thing on Instagram as well.
Yeah. Andrew? What about the videos you put up of Brad going to see Jason Bonham's Led Zeppelin experience? They haven't got blocked.
So they
copyrighted.
they did not get blocked or copyrighted at all. So again, you can't work it out, ladies and gentlemen. So the 3 cents we get for those videos goes to the channel. Doesn't go to the record company. And then some videos that we've done where we've played 30 seconds or 5 seconds of an intro, they'll block the whole video.
Yeah.
So
it is weird, isn't it? It is weird that you would think that those bands would want their music. Taking the money, that's fine. It's their song. That's no issues with that. But blocking things just seems to be cutting off your nose to spite your face, and not not in the interest of people coming across it, promoting your music to people who are who may not have heard of it very much.
Yeah.
I have somebody who works for me who has no idea who Jimmy Page is.
Really?
She's about 40. I was talking to her and I said, "Oh, Jimmy Page." And she went, "I don't know who that is." Don't worry, I've been educating her. But it's but that's my point is, she's under 40 and she's never heard of him. Never heard of Led Zeppelin really at all. Doesn't know what they are, and so you'll just there's a whole load of people who will never hear it because you get because you get blocked all the time. Shouldn't be listened to anyway. Anyway, they're all mad, but we aren't. Poor old Holly's eyes are. You need to buy a bigger screen. Actually, I'll tell you something. Have you noticed this? If you look at it on an iPad, did you know this? Well, if you put it full screen, see, you can zoom in. So I'm really big.
There you go.
Discovered that recently. It's the sort of thing. Everybody goes, "Oh, we knew that years ago, Simon, you idiot." But I discovered that a few weeks ago. Actually, if you put it full screen on your iPad, you could just do that and you could zoom right in. So you could see stuff in the background.
So that's better, I think.
Is that better?
Yeah. Holly, is that better? You're on a 42-inch TV. I can't imagine anything more terrifying, Holly. Morning, Sim Tree.
Yeah.
That's funny. I'll do shout out in a minute.
Yeah, that's better. Yeah, I agree. It's just we were just mucking around. It's a good idea. It's a good idea to have the person presented. We might fine tune it and see if we can keep the bigness and the focus and change that around. But Michael on the show, and this thing here, you know,
Yeah.
big part of our channel's life. We've done a few shows on this, haven't we, Brad and Simon? Done a few shows, and we look forward to doing probably half a dozen more, Brad and Simon.
Yeah.
Did I not say that? Sending that thing, I said that to you, didn't I? Looks like we're doing a lot more shows.
I think 24 Nights is going to run our channel now.
It's a lot of shows. It's a lot of 24 shows. Well, if you do Michael, also if you do Michael maths, once he said there was one song that was like you spent every second of the song, we spent 4 seconds discussing it. So it's like 4 times as long discussing the song as actually the song was. So if you multiply that up by 97 tracks, we'd be here for the next 6 months.
I'm looking forward to seeing the film, though, and hearing the film. You know, the 17 songs I think that they're going to do in the film. I'm looking forward to that, guys. Got my ticket. Got my tickets for that.
Yeah, I haven't got my tickets for that.
Oh, yes, yeah.
But I've ordered the definitive CD set with Blu-rays. I've got that one now, the Super Deluxe Edition. So I'm extremely excited.
It cost 200,000 Australian dollars.
I don't want to talk about how much it costs, but you know, I've been waiting. Like all of us, I've been waiting 30 years for this to come out. So it's about time, Eric. You know, we've been waiting a long damn time. That you know, I'm happy to pay it because it's something that you know, it's one of the reasons I'm a big Eric Clapton fan. It's the 24 Nights era. So it's definitely, you know, right up there as my favorite era of Clapton, that early 90s era, the 24 Nights. The original 24 Nights and the Four Faces of Eric Clapton they played on MTV, which was basically 24 Nights, different versions of stuff, but from the same Albert Hall gigs, was the reason that I bought a pewter grey Fender Strat. So, you know, it's the whole reason I'm a Clapton nut, to be honest. So they're big dollars.
I've got good news for you, Brad. Your mum's asking in the chat how much it cost.
He doesn't want to know. Disappointed to know I spent that much on music stuff, but I'm sure she would be. But look, it's one of those things, you know, you've got to do it when you.
Oh, you got to have it. Yeah.
30 years.
But as I was cheering them up in the green room by telling them how much it cost to take my family to the theatre on Wednesday.
Look, this weekend my bank account and my wallet got abused quite a lot, unfortunately.
Good, right, for good cause.
But I stayed in the city, my girlfriend, my partner, and for 2 nights, and but it was all worth it. But at the end of the day, buying some clothing and the Eric Clapton 24 Nights definitive box set. I'm done for the year. I'm not buying nothing else. That's it. No more books, no more CDs, no more guitars, no more strings, no more guitar picks.
No, that's it.
I'm done too.
Yeah, I'm going to make do.
I'm done too. Buying the records was enough to. You guys will slowly see me get thinner and thinner and thinner over the next 3 months as I pay for it, because I won't be eating, but just a bowl of rice a day, bro.
That's a roller.
The rock and roll diet. It's 2-minute noodles and tomato sauce. Don't laugh. I've done it for many years. When I was touring, I had to eat that sort of stuff. What you gonna do?
Yeah. Terrifying.
No, look, exciting times, ladies and gentlemen, for us and the channel. As Brad said, you know, one of the reasons why I became a diehard Clapton fan too was that Journeyman album era, 24 Nights. That's when it was done for me, when Eric became my guy. And since, and you know, building our channel slowly, Simon and Brad, around, you know, Eric Clapton, and you know, the videos that we've done. You know, he's brought in a lot of views to the channel over the years that we've been doing this. So thanks, Eric, not only for the music, but, for helping what we do here.
Yeah, 100%. But please don't wait another 30 years to release things like you have this time. 30 years is a long time.
Look, I know that we've got Jimmy Page to talk about, but isn't it amazing? Because it wasn't that long ago when the four of us with Michael, we were talking about, isn't it going to be great? What's your biggest dream that you're going to have, Brad? And Brad said, besides winning Lotto and becoming a multi-millionaire and touring with Jimmy Page, it will be a definitive 24 Nights album release.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and opening for Eric Clapton here in Australia when he comes. That'd be great. Support man. Hey, I promise I won't play any Eric Clapton or Cream songs to open. All right.
Okay, you got the gig, bro.
You're in.
Hey, I promise I won't play my pewter grey Strat either, because we don't want to, get the.
Yes.
Sort of, I'm trying to get the hair going, like.
You want your Jimi Hendrix Strat just to wind him up even more.
Yeah.
That's it.
Oh dear.
Are we going to do some work, or are we just
going
to sit here and talk shit
I'll
for
do a
a
shout out.
couple of hours?
To be honest with you, I kind of forgot we were live and I forgot we're doing a show today. But, yeah,
I'll say hi to the folks in the chat. There's a few people. So we've got Tim Thomas. Good morning, Tim. Ellen. Good morning, Ellen. Of course. We've got Arvin. Good morning, Arvin. Up late. Thanks for staying up. Gretch Zeppelin. Morning, Gretch. Holly Lewis. Morning, Holly. Got the mug. Got the coffee. We're in. We've got Simtree as well. Morning, Simtree. Trevor, nice to see you. Obviously up late as well. I think that's everybody. Tim Thomas, Holly, I think that's everybody. Also, I'd like to shout out to our friend Bob Schaffner, who's recovering from his various medical travails, but he's on the slow but steady road to recovery. Do a lot of rehab and things. So Bob, get well soon, mate. We're thinking of you. I messaged him yesterday, see how he's getting on, and I think it's slow progress, but progress. Yeah, I've seen him get on social media, so that's good.
Well, that's good to hear. That's great to hear. Stay strong. Just keep pushing forward and taking every day as it comes, Bob. That's all you can do. Yep. One day at a time.
One day at a time. So, So that's cool. Getting well. That's good.
Yeah. All right. Well, so we're okay to start work now, gentlemen, or are we going to keep going the way we're going? I've quite enjoyed the relaxed intro, but it's time to do some work.
Mr. Walton is just one sec. I'm still listening.
Andrew, I'm going to ask you before we get into anything here, if you can just show the album cover picture. That's it. Nothing else, just that picture. Can you do that? Are you able to throw that one up?
Sure. No problem at all, bro. Give me 2 seconds.
Yep. Sorry to put you on the spot, but I think it's a cracking album cover. I love this album cover. So this is our beloved Jimmy Page Outrider album. His 1988 Outrider album. So this album is his solo release. It was released through Geffen Records. It was recorded early 1987. So basically, he finished with the firm and he decided to do a solo record. And he wanted to put a lot more guitars and everything into the to make it a guitar power force sort of record, which I think he did an exceptional job with this record. It's the first time he recorded with another label. He always recorded with Atlantic Records or Swan Song Records. And basically the recording was done in his personal studio, The Soul. And it was released on 19th of June, 1988. And he had a lot of guests on the records. He had a few different singers. He had Robert Plant on one track as well. And Jason Bonham, the son of the amazing John Bonham from Led Zeppelin, plays drums on the record. I believe this was meant to be a 2-album release, which is a bummer. It never actually came across that way or eventuated that way. But during the early recording stages of the album, Page's house was broken into, and amongst items stolen were the demo tapes, which had been recorded up until that point, which is a bit sad that they obviously didn't remember the material that they'd worked on, or whether they thought it was worth trying to recapture. I don't know. Obviously, Page at that point, he hadn't done any demos for the album itself up until they started recording the album. The album sadly reached number 26 on the Billboard charts. I thought it would have got higher myself, but it came number 27 on the UK album charts as well. And I've got a few quotes here, which I'm going to read out, which is from Page, Jimmy Page himself, which, as we know on the channel, we always try to go with the main source, which is Jimmy Page. So, you know, years later, he reflected on this album and he was very positive in a roundabout way. He put, Outrider's all right. It's demo-like compared to those overproduced albums that came out at the time. It didn't do very well. Doesn't matter. I did a tour. I was playing music on the tour, right back to the Yardbirds. Jason Bonham was on the drums on that tour. He put here also, I decided to make my own solo album, and this would be my first. I recruited Jason Bonham, son of John Bonham, on drums for the Outrider album. We had fun jamming in Ibiza Heartbreak Hotel, so I thought it would be worth giving it a try. So they obviously jammed together prior to this record being done. We started off with Tony Franklin on bass, and then John Miles came on board to sing and write lyrics. That was a game changer. He was superb, a fantastic musician, a phenomenal team player, and was also incredibly versatile as a vocalist, which meant that when we went on tour, we were able to do numbers throughout my career, going all the way back, because he could pull off Chris Farlow, Robert Plant, Paul Rogers, and of course his own supercharged John Moss voice. He made it very enjoyable. He also put here, I had already recorded 3 tracks with Chris Farlow, Prison Blues, Blues Anthem, and Hummingbird before John Miles joined in. I had recorded all the guitar parts and had the track for what became John Miles' first collaboration on vocals and lyrics. It was called Wasting My Time. It became the single taken off the album. And then suddenly Tony Franklin disappeared, the bass player. All his equipment was still in the studio, but he wasn't. He'd gone to Los Angeles. Giffen, having seen him in the firm, poached him to play in a band called Blue Murder, founded by Whitesnake guitarist John Sykes. Can you see a little bit of incestual stuff going on here?
Yep.
The drummer was come on a piece from Vanilla Fudge. It sounded like good chemistry, but I don't know what happened to them. It was then I recruited the Venezuelan bass player Durbin Laverde. I don't know if I pronounced that properly. I apologize if I haven't. He tidied up the bass parts on the album and was keen to go on tour. So obviously the album was in my opinion, was what I figure for Jimmy Page was a launching pad for him to get out and play. And obviously this record, it may not have been as successful as he probably wished it or hoped it would have been. I still think in retrospect and listening back to it at this present point in time, it's a very powerful record, and I'm extremely glad that he decided to do it. So, gentlemen, have you guys got anything you'd like to add to this? Simon?
Cool intro, bro. Cool intro.
No, I think that you know, clearly it wasn't as successful as you know. I think it, you know, that it's. I think there's some reasons for that. It's quite diverse. It's got different vocalists, you know, and it's one of the things we've learned, you know, is that because it's not Led Zeppelin, it's not going to sell. You know, people do solo records or whatever, even though they're from very famous bands, they don't do as well as if you're in, you know, if it's the band thing. So it doesn't, listening back to it, you know, now it doesn't necessarily surprise me that it didn't do so well. But I think that kind of, you know, by the late 80s, that kind of diversity was a bit of an anachronism, really. And, you know, people going for that much more, you know, one sound goes for a whole album kind of thing. Yeah. So not quite the same thing, but.
Well, it's kind of like I was listening to a few interviews with Jimmy Page over the last 2 weeks. And one of them he's talking about the album in particular, like the first side being very rock orientated and the second side being a little bit more blues and a little bit more back to its roots. But obviously Jimmy Page being from Zeppelin in that 70s era where they never really thought about releasing singles and were never worried about sort of pushing that dynamic of publicity. They were more interested in just selling records and playing gigs. But I still think it's a great album. And personally, I remember the first time I heard it, my friend through school, public school and high school, was named Luke Foley. He introduced me to the album because at that time I was getting right into Led Zeppelin. And he goes, have you heard the new Jimmy Page record come out? It was 1988. I went, no, I didn't know he'd done a solo record. And he bought it on CD and he put the first track on. And I still remember the first track. And I think at that moment, every time I put that CD on, every time I put that song on the first track, I just think of like being blown away going, he's done it. He's moved. He's done a solo record. It sounds fantastic. I couldn't believe it. The sounds weren't like Led Zeppelin. They were embracing a little bit of that 80s sound on the drums and everything. But I was blown away. I mean, you gentlemen, Andrew and Simon, Andrew, you want to go first? Do you remember the first time you listened to this record?
Yeah, I got it when it came out too. You know, I had a couple of friends that were eager and, you know, through our local record store knew that this album was coming out, Simon, and, you know, trad magazines would come out and they would always have, you know, the albums that were coming out, you know, in the forward reviews. Not necessarily a review, but a forward article about something. So obviously, you know, Jimmy Page, big part of our lives when you're a young cat growing up. And it's like, oh my gosh, you know, you know, this is something relevant that we have to get hold of, Simon, you know, and Brad. You guys can understand that, you know, because we're listening to Led Zeppelin from the 70s.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, and the Firm, okay, which was interesting. But this idea of grabbing something that was current from Jimmy Page was a huge motivating factor for me and about 3 or 4 of my friends. And then I found subsequently other people that were, you know, into music. And you know, we were talking about this last week, weren't we, Brad? You know, this was on a continuous play for 6 months.
Yes.
And I haven't listened to it for a long time, so I'll just keep this for the conclusion. But it's interesting. I'm gonna, before we get into the tracks, I'm gonna say though, I didn't know anything at the time that this was an album that wasn't quite influenced by the 80s sound. It was a little bit influenced by it, but not quite heavily when you compare it to other tracks at the time. It was never a solidly 80s sound, Simon. And looking back on it over the last couple of days, it's not.
Yeah.
You know, it's not heavily drenched in that chorus. There's a couple of songs where you know he's got the chorusy effect going and stuff like that. Yeah. But it's not heavily drenched in it, which is remarkable. It's still got that rock edge. So no, we were keen. We were keen as mustard, mate, to get this album. Anything with Page, Brad, is what is it? It's a thing for printing money.
Yeah, well, I threw my wallet on the counter. I went to my local record store. I just threw my wallet on the counter. I said, just give me a copy. Didn't matter how much it cost. But Simon, are you familiar with the album?
Well, no, not really. I mean, it doesn't. I sort of clearly 1988. Where was I in 1988? Can't remember. But not in a place. I don't think I was buying many records. I think we just bought a house and stuff, so I wasn't really buying stuff. And clearly it wasn't on the radio, but hardly not at all. So didn't really hear it over here, not in the UK. And as I said, there's that thing about, you know, it's a solo album by Jimmy Page, and it kind of, as you said, Brad, you know, it didn't really chart very high, and I don't think that that I heard it at all at the time. But Andrew, I agree with you. I think that what's you know, if we could say it again, you know, the genius of Jimmy Page is not, you know, you don't produce all of it so it sounds like the era that you're coming from, just because you know clearly it doesn't sound like those 80s records. It has a tinge of it, but he hasn't gone overboard with it. Therefore, when you listen to it now, it doesn't sound like, God, that's an 80s record with those 80, it sounds, like timeless, as as all the Led Zeppelin stuff does. And I think, that yet again, it's a credit to Jimmy Page as a producer that he's managed, he didn't get sucked into the, and just having, I'm going to have the today sound, because that's the sound of today. He's got to sound contemporary. He's still done his own thing, gone his own way, produced it, the way that he would have wanted it. And, you, again, my admiration for Jimmy Page knows no bounds on these shows, but, I think it's to his credit that he didn't, so it doesn't sound like an 80s record, it sounds like it could come from any time, really, which is fantastically good.
The only thing, in my opinion, that would sound slightly 80s to me was the drums and the bass. But all the guitars sounded very Jimmy Page. He wasn't like sort of following the trends of the hair metal bands or anything like that, which was that were relevant at the time. So I was very, very happy with that, obviously.
And I agree. And one interesting fact before we kick it off, I looked at Mr. Wikipedia just to see where it charted. Charted 22 or 23 here in New Zealand, Brad, 24 or 25 in Aussie, and about 26, 27 in the UK, Simon. So it wasn't like wasn't a top 20 album. But it wasn't a bomb when you consider, mid-20s in the 1980s is a pretty good. The US it was a 26 too. So it was a pretty good album.
Solid performance.
I think the fans are buying it, irrespective of what the reviewers. If you go and check the reviews, boy, they said some mean things about this album.
Yes. I didn't. I looked at a couple of reviews when I was doing my research for this album, and I deleted them. I didn't bother reading them. I closed the window, and I'm done. I'd rather stick with people who actually know,
no music
properly, and hear what you gentlemen have to say. So.
You do have to take into account the times, what else is going on at that, particular time, things like that, and as I've just said, if it does sound a bit anachronistic, for that time, and not contemporary, modern sound, stuff like that, and it's quite diverse, I could see it not getting great reviews, to be honest. Then, the late 80s music, for me, music was a bit all over the place by the late 80s, really, and not... and that kind of rock sound, not hugely in vogue then, really. Certainly not in the UK. It's a lot of different diverse stuff going on, but not really so much of that. So I can see that then it wasn't viewed as a contemporary sound, and therefore people are not going to give it a great review. Because that's and some of that is about the time which it's in which it's released. I think on reflection, it's probably a better album than those reviews say so. But I think some bits of the time, not just
I don't necessarily read reviews that much. A lot of people are stuck in their own ways and they don't but they'll review something that's absolute crap and say it's brilliant. So that's why I think everyone's entitled to an opinion, but most people don't get it right. And I think we get it right on the show here. That's it.
Well, I think that actually I know some people who are music journalists. The difficulty you have is an album comes out, you get a few days to listen to it, make an assumption about it, given what's going on, and then you write a review. You don't go back 6 months later and say I've lived with this album for 6 months. And then do a much more kind of considered review based on 6 months worth of living with it, kind of thing. So I think it's and like as ever with these things, there's pressure on to get an opinion out this month's issue, blah blah blah, all those things, and I think that's to the detriment of proper criticism and proper analysis of an album. So we try and redress that a bit if we can.
Yeah. Well, gents, shall we get on to the ranking of the tracks, which is what we're actually here
Let's
for?
do it. Yeah.
Yep.
So, well, look, thanks for letting me pick this album, guys, because I'm been dying to do this album, and it's been on my list for a little while to actually do. And everything's the other things pop up, and we sidetrack, and then I get sidetracked with something else. But obviously, I put this album on. Excuse me. I put this album on in my car. I was playing a bit to my son, and I thought to myself, we have to do this record next. That's got to be done. And 2 weeks ago, I messaged Andrew and said, we're doing this album. And he was like, fantastic. So the first track on the album is Wasting My Time. And it's John Miles on vocals. And I still remember the very first time I heard this menacing, sludgy sort of opening riff that opens the song, and the way Jason Bonham sort of does that drum roll into the song, and how excited I was. It was like, it was something that just, I don't know, it was fresh, it was new. I'd listened the hell out of Led Zeppelin, and hearing something new from Jimmy Page was just like, gave me goosebumps. And hearing John Miles' vocals straight away just blew me away. I was so happy for Jimmy Page that he finally released a solo record, and it sounded this powerful off the bat. Like straight off the bat, I thought, this sounds powerful. This sounds probably right where Jimmy Page wants to be right now, without compromising. And, obviously 8 years on, it's 7 years on, he started recording this record from the tragic demise of Led Zeppelin. So I think, he's in a better headspace and a better place mentally and physically as well. And that's evident. And the reason I'm bringing that up, because it's really evident in the way that he's done all of his tracking and guitars and everything on this record. There's some really clever guitar tracking on this song. He's overdubbed tracking of himself, like playing the main riff, and then he's got overdubs giving color and texture to the song as well. And I have to say, Jimmy Page is the master at doing that. Not many people do it as well as Jimmy Page. He can put 10 guitars on one song, and it doesn't sound like 10 guitars. He knows how to layer the song with guitars perfectly, very classy. There's some very classy bass playing. Obviously, Jason Bonham playing so solidly. For a young guy, he's rocking on this album, and he really shines on it. Jimmy definitely has like an onslaught of guitars on this song. The lead guitar, the playing over the top of the verses between the vocals is exceptional. Some of the techniques he uses on the guitar are very clever. They include like depressing a bar or a tremolo bar on the guitar. So it's like, boom, like he does that a lot in this song. He does it a lot on this album, actually, but this song is probably the one he does a lot of it. And so he does that, this depressing of the bar, whether it's a release, like back to tune. So it's the strings that, so for people who don't understand what I'm talking about, it's the tremolo bar or whammy bar on a guitar where you pull it inwards and it makes the strings go really loose and flappy, and then you release it and it comes back to tune. So he's doing that a lot on this song. He uses that technique a lot, and he does dive bombs as well. There's what is it? There's some use of wah pedal in this song to emphasize technique. There's slide. There's the way he's using to actually make it emphasize more what he's actually doing. It's remarkable. And if you listen in headphones in this album, you really hear all the little sections that Jimmy Page has overdubbed, and it really makes you think he could have possibly just done one or two guitar tracks and be done with it. But I think he really wanted to do something that was a well-written song, a clever arrangement with absolutely impeccable guitar tracking on it. And I think he did that. The riff's very catchy. The singing is stellar. The vocal melody is catchy. The drums and bass, they're right on point. I love the outro of this song as well, with the depressed tremolo bar that I was talking about. And then it releases, and you can kind of hear the springs in the back of the guitar in the tremolo just going, like they're just sort of, it's amazing. It's I could talk about this song forever, like I am, and I'll stop it now. This song, fantastic opening. I think it's well deserving of 100 out of 10. Never a skip for me, guys.
Good work. So, 1 second. Yeah. So, as I say, coming to this relatively clear, relatively clean. Sorry, early morning startup issues. The first thing that struck me was how I thought about as soon as it started, I go, oh, it's AC/DC. It's got AC/DC riff at the front.
Well,
exactly the same.
I'm going to mention something in one of the songs coming up.
Yeah, I'll bet. But which rather surprised me, I have to say, in a good way. I thought, oh, okay, it's got that kind of, he's taken that kind of AC/DC swing thing and adapted it for his own style. I think that the vocals, John Miles' vocals, sound quite a lot like Bon Scott. Which is not a bad thing. That's good. It's but as you say, Brad, and I think this, that quite a lot of this, the first side certainly, is taking that presence idea of having quite a lot of guitar tracks doing different things, to give you textures, to give you dynamics, and to give you continued interest, like the slide thing as you've described, and that it kind of really big. He's got a really big driven sound, doesn't he? I mean, it's fantastic. It sounds, as you say, sounds fantastic on a stereo. It's you put it on or headphones. And I think he's taken that idea of having quite a lot of guitar tracks doing different things for different things, and incorporated 8 years later, incorporated it into 10 years later, but incorporated it into here. Yeah, it's a great opening track. You can see why. It's very strong, got a strong riff, very powerful sound. Absolutely opening track. 9 out of 10 from me. Never a skip. Great stuff.
Awesome.
Andrew.
Fantastic, guys. Thank you, Brad, for a great introduction as well. Brilliant. Wasting my time. Welcome home, Jimmy, is the first thing I've written after listening to this the first time round. I love the vocals on this song. It's a similar set of vocals that we're familiar with, but I like the edgy top register that the singer gets, and that parallels with what Simon was saying with a Bon Scott similarity, with that edginess on the high register, something that Page never had. But his vocals are similar enough for guys like us in 1988 to go, oh, okay, we can see some parallels here with some previous band that he used to work with, and that's not a bad thing. The musical thing that I'd like to talk about on this track, ladies and gentlemen, is the slide solo. It's fantastic, and as the rock professor said in his introduction, when we were talking about it, our roundtable discussion, Page has got this wonderful ability never to overdo anything, and he's not overdoing it with the slide solo. It's got a delicate touch. Brad's elaborated a little bit for you guys what's going on with the other textures to build up this soundscape, but I like the delicate touch that he has on the slide. It's not too much, and it's just typical of Page. It's just the right amount. He could have gone nuts with the slide. He could have, but he didn't. He just kept it there. I'm not going to repeat everything that my co-hosts have said. I'm going to agree with what Alan has said in the chat. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Solid 9 out of 10. Great opening track. And it, Brad, it had me and my friends rocking too, bro, when it came out.
Yeah. Can I just I'll just interject before we carry on. Holly asked who is John Miles. John Miles is a British rock singer, guitarist, keyboard player who had a really big hit in the 70s called Music. He wrote 76, I think it was. And he also made some albums through the 70s. I think the other thing that I remember that he did is he was for quite a long time he was Tina Turner's musical director in the 80s. If you watch her live, the bloke playing piano and playing guitar is John Miles, on all those big stadium tours that she did in the 80s. It's he's been around a long time, great musician, and as I say, his biggest hit was a song called Music, so go and check that out. It's quite an epic song, very 70s thing. I hope that was enough, Holly.
Yeah.
Sorry, off you go, no, Brad.
No, that's good. It's good. Well, next song for me is, it's a awesome song. Oh, Wasting My Time. Sorry, where we're up to.
Deja vu.
Want to make love.
So, this is the song I'm referring to. It's a sleazy riff to open the song, and Jason puts in a real halftime fill on the drums. The first kick in, like, the sound is amazing, like the way it comes in. The riff during the verses changes, and Page is just playing killer. The chorus line is another example of using the depressed trem bar effect that he does. I think he was bouncing off a little bit of Jeff Beck here with his trem bar work. I think, Jeff Beck was obviously someone that inspired everyone, including, Jimmy Page looked up to Jeff Beck quite a bit. And I think that influence has rubbed off on Jimmy, and he was doing that for that reason. I can't say that that's factual, but that's just my opinion. Around that 1 minute 50 mark, we hear a bridge section, which is kicking ass. There's a lovely wah-wah guitar overdubbed under the song, which is really incredible. And here's that part I was going to mention about AC/DC. He truly is a rock singer, John Miles. His vocals are incredible on this song, and he really could have taken the spot of AC/DC, no problem. The bass and drums are really locked in tight on this song. 3 minutes 20, we hear more wah pedal overdubs to fatten the song. And I encourage everyone to sort of remember that mark, 3 minutes 20, when you go listen to the track later, and really focus on what he's doing with his wah pedal overdubs to fatten this song. The double time solo at 4 minutes is really exciting. And again, we hear some really classic Jimmy Page guitar soloing. He always solos for the song, regardless of trying to impress guitar players, which I think is something that makes it even better, because it's an art form. It's very easy to sit there and try and overdo things as a guitar player, but to actually sit there and play the right guitar melody, the right guitar solo for a song is quite an art form. It's like a painter that's painting a picture. They can do heaps of lines, or they can do one really strong, fine line, and it really defines the picture. And I think that's the easiest way to describe what Jimmy Page does on guitar. His rhythm guitar track during the solo, he employs more of that wah-wah guitar overdubbing, which is, in my opinion, it sounds phenomenal. And I love that he's thought of doing that, because most people would think to use the wah pedal for the solo, but he's decided to use the wah to like an expression pedal, and it's phenomenal. Another great arrangement and another well-written song. Look, I really can't say enough about these first two opening tracks, and I think this song again is deserving of 100 out of 10, and I'll give it a Brad score. Brad score there.
Good work.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, you could see when absolutely these first two tracks, very rock and roll, very kind of rock sound, very strong, in instant punk. You can see why those two tracks are the first two tracks on the album. I think that, and I think there's as Andrew, as you said earlier, stole some of my thunder. That this first side is the rock side, and then it gets more diverse on the second side, the bluesy thing, and so, which is really cool. But Brad, do you think is there something detuned on this? Has he done a drop detuning on it? I thought it kind of sounded like that very big bottom end thing.
It could possibly be. I've never tried to work out the riff, but
no,
it's a very good question. Yeah,
Yeah,
It
sounded.
Jimmy Page probably is something quite unique going on there with the riff.
Yeah. Well, it could be a whole different tuning. I don't know. I couldn't find anything that was specifically said about it, but but yeah, I was so impressed by that huge kind of driven sound, that he has. It's not too distorted, but it's he's clearly got that 80s thing on it, where he's you can make a really big sound. So he is, which is sounds fantastic to me. I'll just pick up the AC/DC thing. One of the lines is "dress to kill, dress to thrill," which must be a reference to
Shoot the thrill,
Back in Black.
way to kill,
Yeah, shoot the thrill,
too many
ready to kill.
women with too many pills.
Oh my God, it's uncanny. Brian Johnson in the room.
Great song.
Yeah. It's but clearly there must be a reference to AC/DC. It's funny, but I agree with you, Brad. That slide and the wah wah, and not using the wah wah for the solo, but and that solo having a really big sound as well. It's fantastic because again, really strong second song. 9 out of 10 for me. Never a skip. Sounds fantastic. Andrew.
Yeah, I've got a note here too. Bottom EA string riff. It's just fantastic. It was one that gripped me when I was a young guy, and again one that's piqued my attention again when I was listening through it again for our show tonight, guys. Classic. I don't know if it's detuned, Simon. I just think it's a classic Page technique. I think's going on, and maybe we can go and check it out. But I love it. I think it's just classic Page on this song. That riff.
Yeah.
The slide again, we love that. And again, Brad, you've mentioned it before, the layered guitars, that he has coming through on this. I won't mention the wah too much other than, it's a great tool that he uses. One of the foundation wah players in rock and roll, wasn't he?
Yep.
One of the first guys to work out that you can actually do more with the wah than just make it go wah wah, Exactly. So, and as Brad has said to you guys, folks here, he's elaborated for you what he's actually doing with the wah. So a smart guy, analog. Jimmy Page is analog, and back in '88, things were going digital and stuff like that, but the wah was always a key tool, wasn't it, Simon? A couple of years later, we've got Clapton using the wah on Journeyman, so, it's always been there, this tool, this wonderful, is it a tool? Yeah, it's a tool, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And to see it work through and come through, and as Brad has said in the past when he's discussed albums, add colour to an album, it's phenomenal. Page is a genius, and his genius is shining through on the second track. I've made a note here. John Miles's vocals are incredible on the second track. It's just phenomenal. Well done. Just a fantastic partnership. Would have liked to have seen that go on.
Yes.
Don't know. But who knows what they could have done.
Yeah.
Just scratching the surface there with maybe something that could have been phenomenal. Look, I've given this a 10 out of 10. I just think it's a fantastic track. It's never a skip, Brad.
Yeah. No, it's thing that I have to agree with everything you guys have said. If you guys have not checked out any of the bootleg footage on YouTube, I recommend you go and do it at some point and listen to John Miles cover some of the Zeppelin stuff as well.
Oh.
He used to sing Over the Hills and Far Away amazingly, just brilliantly. So anyway, so we're up to the third track. It's called Rites of Winter. Excuse me. It's this is an up-tempo instrumental, first instrumental of the album, and what a great example of Jimmy Page thinking. His way of thinking this song really does. It's a great example and shows what's going on inside his head. I think Jason is using like a slight offbeat to complement Jimmy Page's riff, There's a second guitar track by Jimmy Page with Wah again, and it's to add texture. And around 15 seconds, we hear the main guitar melody kick in. There's an intro and then the main guitar melody kicks in. And there's some really great guitar overdubbing going on here, employed by Jimmy Page. Around the 40 odd seconds into the song, we hear another little guitar change happening in the riff. And I think around the 1 minute mark of the song, we hear some guitar soloing, and we're really treated to some magical, like Jimmy Page wizardry, I like to call it. Around the 1 minute 30, a slight change again in the song, and some really interesting guitar parts are laid down. I've listened to this in my headphones, and I'm picturing the song as tracks. I can hear them all going on. It's amazing the amount of work he's done on these songs. And you don't realize how much work he's actually doing on it because it just sounds all part of one bit. It's amazing. It really is an army of guitars on this song I put here. Can I point out also, listening to this song with headphones, we hear the magical overtones and the moments and the isolation of the stuff that's going on within the tracks. And this is a perfect example of that. So for me, it's 10 out of 10. Never skip this instrumental. It's brilliant. Simon.
Yeah. The first thing that strikes me is that this sounds like something that could have been off Presence. That, as you've described, those kind of that guitar orchestra thing that, that I know he's perfecting, that Achilles' Last Stand is the classic, of lots of guitars and doing different things, and he clearly was working his way, through that as a technique and as a compositional tool, as a way of making amazing music and intricate and complex and dynamic as we all know. It's my favorite word to do with Jimmy Page is dynamics. this time not just use of just the volume control, the tone or whatever, and the pickups. This is using a bit more studio stuff. You've got more tracks to do. You can do different sounds and different playing bits to build up a track and kind of into that kind of guitar orchestra with lots of parts that you've put together. I mean, the brilliance is that it doesn't sound like millions of parts, as you say, Brad. It retains a kind of space. It retains a kind of dynamic that you need. And you again, as you said, you've got the slide and the wah-wah bits as just kind of features, but he doesn't go overboard with them. There's not kind of mental wah-wah playing or whatever. It's kind of quite subtle, and it's in the mix, and it's there. And I think that, as I say, this could have been, for me, it could have been something with a bit of Robert Plant, vocals, and it could have been something of Presence, and it's probably, I felt like it was where they could have gone in some ways, after Intro the Act or something, going off into this more of this kind of thing. I think it's kind of a pointer what they might have done in some ways. I give this 8.5 out of 10. Never a skip. I think I would have liked his vocals, is the truth of it.
Andrew.
Hey, Billy. Thanks for hanging out. Wow. Following you guys is always a hard thing to do. So I'll do my best. On this piece, we get a refined, elegant Page, in my opinion. We've got hints of jazz going on there in the rhythm patterns, which is phenomenal. And it speaks of Page, as the rock professor hinted, with some of the stuff that they were doing in Led Zeppelin and where they could have gone. It speaks of Page's maturity as a musician, this piece. It's a wonderful surprise for me because at the time, it sounded so unlike anything Page had done before. On a totality, and when I listened to it again the first time and the second time, it's like, oh wow, this is so unlike it. But then when you think that it's so unlike Page, you hear moments, Brad, of his technique, and it's like, no, this is Page. You can't, and it's just those elements of it and his guitar technique that he manages to put through. I too have to back up what Brad said about headphones too. You know, we've got turntables, we've got our Wi-Fi system going, but when I walk my dog, I always put my AirPods in, and I love to hear the tracks, the albums that we talk about in my ears too, to pick up those stereo changes and the layering textures that you probably won't concentrate on and hear if it's just blasting in your car stereo system.
No.
If you know what I mean. So again, I was surprised when I went and listened to this a couple of days later. After hearing it just playing in the background at work, the textures, and this is going to be a constant theme that I'm going to be talking about when we talk about this album. Again, we all know that Page is a master when it comes to studio techniques and producing, don't we? You know, he's a master at it. And, you know, this, again, for me is a wonderful example of him from a producer and an engineering perspective, Brad and Simon. So I'm captivated by that. I've given this a 9.5 out of 10. It's a fantastic piece. I'm glad the rock professor mentioned vocals. I know it's an instrumental, and I know where Page is going with this because he wants to break free and say, "Look, I'm Jimmy Page. I'm not the guitar player of Led Zeppelin or The Firm. I'm Jimmy Page, the musician." I get that, but it would have been nice to see the previous singer maybe sing something to this. I don't know.
Yeah.
Brad.
Yeah.
It's not a criticism though.
No. Yeah, no, I agree. Well, we're up to the next track, which is called The Only One. And this one features one and only Robert Plant on vocals. And look, from the left and right guitar panning intro, we know we're in for a treat with this song. And you know, again, if you're listening to with headphones, you'll really understand what I'm talking about with the intro. Great guitar melody after the drums come in. It's got like its own little thing going on. And then, of course, Robert Plant comes in singing, and we're treated to what may have been probably the closest thing to maybe a Led Zeppelin reunion. I mean, we've got Jason Bonham on drums, and he's playing wonderfully. And Robert's voice is sensational. And lyrically, Robert, in my opinion, never disappoints. I think he writes amazing lyrics. You can only imagine if John Paul Jones was playing bass in this song, you know, what it could have been. It could have been a Led Zeppelin reunion of some sorts on Jimmy's solo record. And but that being said, the bass player does a great job as well. The song really does have a Zeppelin texture to this, but sounds fresh. It doesn't sound like they've tried to recapture A Whole Lot of Love or any of their past bigger songs. They've really just kept it like a little bit organic. And Jimmy Page, he textures and guitar layers some wonderful guitar parts throughout the song. Guitar, there's definite chemistry between Robert and Jimmy. Although Robert has a thriving solo career in 1988, I think some of his best post-Zeppelin work was with Jimmy Page. And that's obviously the work that Page did with him on Now and Zen. And this was slightly after Now and Zen. I think it was like Page and Robert's little return of favor coming onto Jimmy's album. And I think when you watch some of the interviews and whatnot about Jimmy promoting this album, there's one with Mick Warhurst, I think he's talking about, forgive me if I've got the interview all wrong because my brain's a little bit fuzzy. But he says, of course, Jimmy Page goes, of course, Robert Plant is amazing. And what can you say about this song? There's no denying that. The songwriting team here is one of the greatest of all times. Around 2 minutes 33, the song sort of breaks down, has like this cheeky little thing from Robert Plant where he's sort of, oh, that's all, well, you know, he's giving the ad-lib stuff. I think that he was always good at doing with Zeppelin. And it takes off into a wonderful Jimmy Page solo. There's lots of tremba depressing, which is what I've been discussing previously in the first two tracks. You can't go past Jimmy Page's solo guitar stylings. They're very Zeppelin-ish. And I love how, Rob Plant comes in singing over the top of it, going, talk, 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 talk. I love how that interplay between Page and Robert Plant is still obviously there. I'm sure Jimmy Page thoroughly enjoyed collaborating with his songwriting buddy of many, many years again, and it's evident on the track. My good friend that introduced me to this album, Luke Foley, once told me that this he once told me this song sounds more like a Robert Plant solo album track than a Jimmy Page song. I tended to agree to some extent, but I do hear Zeppelinish vibes going on. I guess that's always going to be the case when these two collaborate. So for me, it's one of the highlights of the record, maybe because Robert Plant's on it. I don't know, but it's exciting to me, this song, and I gave it 100 out of 10. It's never a skip for me.
Look at that. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I completely. Yes, I agree. Yes. I mean, I think I'm with you, Brad. I think that this is, again, this sounds like something that they would have gone post-presence, post Into the Outdoor. That's where Page might have taken it, Page and Plant together. I think it's it has, as you said, quite a lot of parts. It's quite sonically big. It's melodically interesting. It's rhythmically diverse. It has all those things. That, as you say, are moving it on from. It's not Whole Lot of Love by a country mile, which is important, I think, and true. That that clearly Page is still growing, changing as a musician, refining what he does, and changing what he does. With the new studio techniques and all those things, building this into a track like this. Yeah. And I think that's right. It's not just a straightforward blues thing. It's it is something quite different to that. And absolutely, it's yes. I mean, the solo that he does is kind of really integrated into the track, isn't it? It's not like a step out, up the neck kind of thing. It's much more kind of integrated into the thing, which is, Andrew, I pick up on your point you said earlier. It's all about the song. Jimmy Page doesn't feel like he has to stand up, stand on the monitors and do every single time. I'm going to play a part that's in the song, serves the song, and does its bit, with that. And if it's not, it doesn't have to be that all the time. And I think that's really cool. I think that, again, that kind of arranging mentality that he's got, and it makes these things special. I think, makes them, great to listen to, interesting and stuff. I gave it 9 out of 10. Never a skip. Great song, and great to see Plant and Page doing something cool together. More. It's not going to happen. Andrew.
Thanks everybody for joining us. We've got 10 people watching us. You guys are fantastic, and as usual, your contributions are always welcomed. Brad, Plant comes to the party, doesn't he? Key component of this number, clearly again, is the slide for me. Good to see it, I highlighted a comment there from Robert. Danny Gatton, reminiscent of Danny Gatton's slide. Interesting comment. And that nice finesse that Gatton has as a slide player. I get it. I get it now. So, good point. I'm going to call it as I see it, guys. This song's a speed bump, bit of a speed bump for me on this track. There's a lack of bass and bottom end on this, Brad, for me compared to the other tracks, and that means it's not a solid rocker, which it could have been. The song could have been a solid rocker. It's a fun song, and I appreciate the fact that Page has come in here. And I too want to take up the point where the rock professor said, again, where could they have gone? 30 odd years ago, I had the same conversation with 5 other cats saying, just imagine where these guys could have gone. A good friend of mine, David McCall, who was always really good at doing that high falsetto sort of Plant rip-offs, would go around and sing, parts of this song because he loved it. So it's got a soft spot in my repertoire in my catalogue of thinking with tracks. Brad, I've given this an 8.5 out of 10. Never a skip.
All right.
Oh, look out. Oh, dear.
I don't want to say too much more. I don't want to upset the boss of the show.
No bass, lack of bass and drums, brother. Lack of bottom end on it for me, which is interesting.
All right. Well, that half a point probably saved your ass from being timed out. So,
Ooh.
All right, well, let's move forward. We'll move forward. Okay, so we're up to the last song on the first side called Liquid Mercury. And again, we're treated to another instrumental track. This is a wonderful guitar intro riff. Jason comes in with that snare drum wonderfully. He handles the odd tom signatures really well. And Jimmy adds guitar melody from about the 32 sort of second mark, and around that 1 minute mark, we hear like a turnaround of the song. And Jimmy certainly embraces using the tremolo on this album. He employs it for the vibrato purposes on this song more so than depressing the bar and trying to make an effect that way. He's using it like for vibrato. Around 1 minute 50, we hear flutter of notes leading us into another mystical guitar solo, very reminiscent of like Led Zeppelin days for Jimmy Page to me. The outro of the song has many layers and textures of the guitar. It is definitely an army of guitars, and I really love the instrumental. I think it's a wonderful song to end side one, and I've given it 10 out of 10. I really love this instrumental. Simon.
Clearly, this is one of Brad's favourite albums. I can tell. I've been getting a measure of it.
It doesn't get 100 out of 10, but it's right up there. I love it.
Right up there. So yeah, another, as you said, again, I thought, it got that drop D thing again that he used on the other instrumental. That was a bit of a drop D tuned riff, big kind of.
Yeah. Possibly. I've never.
I don't know. No, me neither. It's a. Maybe I will at some point. But yeah, it's got again some nice slide parts and a nice sort of slide solo, and then you've got Jimmy play, some of the old fire coming through with his proper solo at 2 minutes, really going for it. Typical Page that of old kind of thing, stepping off the cliff, up the neck, giving it some. Yeah, it's instrumentals. I gave this 8 out of 10 and never a skip. I think this is the right place for it. At the I like vocals, Brad. I do like a nice vocal.
See you, Robert.
Cheers, Robert. Sleep well. Good morning, Jonas Hellberg.
Liquid Monday.
Liquid Mercury.
Liquid Mercury. Sorry, Liquid Monday. I can't even read my own
Liquid
writing.
Monday.
Love the bass and tom. Love the bass and toms on this, and again, it's a remarkable thing because the lack of on the previous song, and yet on this we get it in the intro, and that jingly jangly guitar, Brad. It's a nice little thing going on. Again, unlike Page, an unlike Pagey kind of thing. It's got an exciting intro. I love it. At the 2 minute mark, you've got that stinging guitar coming in, which again is Page. So just in case you think it's not, it is. And it sounded like nothing else at the time. I know that we've said that in the intro, but this sound, I can't think of anything that I was listening to. This was completely on its own. In a contemporary sense compared to everything else that we were listening to back in 88, 89, guys. I've got to make that quite clear. I've given this a 9 out of 10, and again, I've got to back up the Rock Professor there. It's the perfect place for this instrumental. Perfect. It's never a skip. Love it.
Well, that's side one knocked out of the park, guys. Do you want to show some quick pictures, Andrew? Do you think, or
Sure. Brought to you, ladies and gentlemen, by these two fine men.
oh, yeah, the boy, the young man.
So I'm just going to fire them up, and you can just talk about them. Is that cool?
Yeah, sure, mate. Sure. So obviously that's just a promo that they did for the Outrider album with Jimmy Page, and the time lapse shots on the Outrider covered. I think he wanted to create like an effect of mystery and movement and energy. He said it was risky business because he didn't know what it was going to look like till the film had been processed. Rather than looking at a camera first and moving to the head, he moved his head from the side and then moved it to the front. So effectively, he's looking sideways, and then the photo was taken. He moved to the front, so they didn't really know what the photo was going to look like. And back in those days, it wasn't like digital cameras or your phones. You can look at what the photo looked like. They had no idea till it was processed. Yeah, and he was obviously moving the guitar up and down as well. He was pretty happy with these photos and the artwork that was done around the album at the time. So there's another great photo as well from the same shoot. And that's the album cover there, which we've looked at. I think it's a great album cover. Really captured something pretty magical. And that's, that's pretty much like straight out of the Jimmy Page anthology. That just showing off the releases there and whatnot. And okay, so this guitar is pretty. I'll quickly talk to you about this one. This is straight out of Jimmy Page anthologies, but I already had two Telecasters with B benders, string benders, mechanisms made by Gene Parson of Parson White. He asked Gene if he could fit one into a Les Paul because he wanted the thicker sound of a Les Paul because it wasn't prone to feedback when it was played loud. It took him a long while to do it, and he sent it back, and it played beautifully. He said that was the last time he'd ever fit a string bender to a Les Paul. So probably the only one who's got one. So he said it was definitely hard because of the contour of the body and everything, whereas the Telecaster is sort of like a flat body. Jimmy Page said he knew the Les Paul string bender would be perfect for the Outrider album because he wanted to bring in quite a lot of guitar tones and variety throughout the album. Features on the instrumental track Rites of Winter, which he wrote around was it Stravinsky's masterpiece Rite of Spring. He was influenced by that. He said he was pushing the chordal aspects of the song. He wrote the number around specific capabilities of the string bender. So it was an important guitar for him for this album.
And a 70s Les Paul there, because you can see that it's a pancake. It's not a two-piece.
Yeah. So that's a very important part of the Outrider album as well. And that's again the photos from which I described before. But yeah, that's
the back of the B bender.
Yep. So that mechanism there is a string bender, and if people don't know what that means, if you pull down on the neck of the guitar downways, it bends the B string on the guitar.
And normally they're put in Telecasters.
Yeah. And they were very, very much used for country vibes, the B benders Yeah.
Yes.
So this is
Gene White, the inventor of it, was definitely a country player. He played in the Byrds in their country phase. Yeah. So this is an interesting picture, and it's straight out of the anthology as well. I thought we'd just quickly discuss this one because this is what is written here. During the recording of Outrider, I asked Chris Farlow to come along because I wanted to play blues with him. Prison Blues was just a live take with bass drums and guitar and voice. We did 2 takes, working really quickly and effectively. After that, I picked up the Washburn acoustic 12-string and started to play some chord progression, which is the guitar in the bottom right there. Chris sang along to them, making up the lyrics as he went. We carried on like that, and before we knew it, we'd completed the whole piece. Fortunately, someone had pressed the record button so we could hear it back. Then we recorded it again with everybody playing live.
it became Anthem Blues, which is a song we're going to be ranking pretty soon. Creating something out of thin air like that was channeling music in the moment, was absolutely amazing, and I was really thrilled with it. Later, I decided to put some orchestration over the 12-string. I got my Roland 707 guitar synthesizer, which I used to call the Dalek handbag, and came up with this. I think it's the only time I've ever used that guitar. So that's that guitar on the left there.
Yep.
And the pedal board on the floor, which is the little picture beside the guitar there that Roland used for advertising. That's interesting that he only ever used the guitar once, and they advertised it. But I thought that was a very important part of this album ranking.
And a lot of bands, you would have seen a lot of new wave bands and a lot of electronica bands in the early 80s. Yes. Some of the guitar players had a lot of those guitars as well. So it was always an interesting thing to see that associated with Page. But good background there, brother.
Yeah, and that just there is the outfit, and that's well, I'll read out what it was for that if you don't mind. It might take a second. Where is it? Okay. Where's my notes? Okay, the Outrider album was on Geffen Records, and they were very excited about doing Wasting My Time as a video. We shot it at Shepparton Studios. I had this suit and the KET guitar, which is there. Someone might have mentioned earlier they thought it was a Jackson guitar. It's a KET branded guitar, which I thought really looked good in the combination. I don't normally like doing videos. I prefer things to be spontaneous. And as we know, with filming, it's always do it again. However, it was fun to do the promotion for this album. I thought the track Wasting My Time was really good. John Miles wrote the lyrics and sang on it, and he did the most amazing job throughout the project. I kept the suit to use on tour. So that's straight out of the anthology book as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to sell the book, by the way, but
buy it, go and buy it.
Yeah. And I just thought that's a really cool picture. Like, obviously, he's got his down electrode there, and they've got some of the tour, Outrider tour stuff there, the local crew stuff, the VIPs to go. And that's obviously a promo shot with that
Power to the people.
And I've sort of looked up that guitar that he's using there, and then they look like mini humbuckers in the single coil positions. So, yeah. They look like little hot rails or something like that. I don't know what they are in there, but someone might be able to allude to what that is and maybe use that guitar on the recordings. I'm not sure. But that's another cool promo pick, and I guess someone's Outrider ticket that they've gone to watch him play. Was it Oakland Coliseum? And it's
Oakland.
Yeah, and that's a picture of obviously Page on the Outrider tour. He's down electro. So I'm assuming he's probably playing Kashmir somewhere. That's out of the film clip. That's a really cool picture.
Eat your heart out, David Coverdale.
Well, you know what? Coverdale Page come after this, and
anyway. Yeah. I know that. Where do you think Coverdale got it from, bro?
Yes, I know.
Who's that hobbit?
Listen,
is that a hobbit?
I know. Who's this little thug? Yeah, he looks like a little thug here. He looks like he'd go beat you up if you say something wrong about his mum, you know. He's that's Jason Bonham, very young Jason Bonham, little chubby cheeks on him. His dad would be very proud, I'm sure.
He looks like a ging, bro. Is he a ginger?
Oh, look, he's
I got nothing against gingers either.
No. He was a wonderful addition to this album, without doubt. And that's just a cool picture of Pagey, probably during the filming of the film clip.
Yeah, having a number, isn't he?
Yep. But there we go. I think that's all the pictures. Oh no, there's another one there. That's a very cool little promo. And I loved the logo they did, the JP logo. I thought that was very cool.
That was the ad that I remember seeing that ad.
I always wanted to track that down as a wall hanging, for the wall. And obviously that's Page on the tour, probably playing, White Summer or something like that.
And I remember that. I remember this as well. the big
Yes.
cardboard cutout
Yes.
that we
Yep.
wanted to steal, but you couldn't
Yeah.
steal back then because it was, bad to steal things. But now you can. You can just go into shops and steal, apparently.
Listen to that. Now you can just go into shops and steal things. Incitement to rioting. Dear me.
And just
Good
quickly,
thing we're an hour and a half in.
That's the book I got a lot of that reference out of too.
Yeah,
So if
yeah.
anyone's interested, mandatory reading and mandatory if you're a Zeppelin Jimmy Page nut.
Got to have it.
Yeah. My girl got me this, so thank you for my birthday. It was one of the best books I've got, I think. One of.
Definitely.
So we're up to the next song. Next song on side 2 is Hummingbird. This is a wonderful blues song. It's an old song that they've covered, and Chris Farlow is the singer on this one, and he's got a very characteristic style voice, very blues oriented voice, and it takes a bit of time to get into his vocal styling on this album compared to say Robert Plant and John Miles. It's a lot different, but if you just listen to it as a blues song, it's wonderful. And I really love the way they play this song. It's got a real laid back from Jason Bonham. Jimmy keeps it very simple. There's really, I don't think there's any overdubs. If there is, there's only one or two, and it's pretty much, it sounds like the song's done pretty much live to me. Around the 1 minute 55, we hear the first solo. It's unmistakably Jimmy Page. The pauses, the phrasing, and it's just a classic example of Jimmy Page, why we love him so much. There's a real laid back feel from Jason Bonham on this, and Jimmy Page keeps it really simple. Around the 1 minute 50 mark here, there's Jimmy Page, that whole thing he does, the blues techniques. He puts a really sad emotional feel to his playing. He does something where he rakes the string, like he rakes across the string when he's playing a lick, like does that sort of thing. He used to do it in Zeppelin a lot, and he does it in this song a few times, and it really, really, really makes the song sound emotional. And the second solo, it brings tears to your eyes. There's something special and magical about Page as a blues player, and I think he stamps his authority down here as being a legendary blues guitar player. There's one part in that second solo when he changes from the neck pickup, from the bridge pickup to the neck pickup. It gives me goosebumps every time. His playing is unbelievable on this. We hear some out of phase tonality things going on as well. Very B.B. King, Peter Green vibes happening as well. But again, Page's Jimmy Page, and he plays his way. He's playing beautifully all round. Look, it's a 100 out of 10 for me, this song. It's one of the highlights blues on the song. I'm a blues nut, and I personally think Jimmy Page is one of the greatest blues guitarists ever, and I love hearing him play blues. Simon.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think that I'm familiar with Chris Farlow.
It gets better later on.
Steady now. I think that it takes the kind of, yes, it's got an interesting second side, isn't it? It's a bit more of a ballad thing. It's an interesting opener to stuff, but it retains the funky kind of feel of the original, the Leon Russell original, which is although Leon Russell's playing it on piano, not on guitar, so it's a different thing, which kind of retains that feel. But again, I think Chris Farlow is a great singer, and I think he does a fantastic job of singing on this. I really like it, and I think, surprised they didn't do more. I think it's a bit of a shame they didn't do more, to be honest, because I think Chris Farlow, I hadn't really thought of it before, but I think he really suits, that kind of bluesy side of Jimmy Page completely. And bringing out to great effect on this. I agree with you, Brad. About, the solo is a kind of lovely melodic, kind of spacey, isn't it? Plenty of space. Holly said is room to breathe, and I think that this is a classic case of that. Not do it again. That thing about Jimmy Page, don't do too much. Just enough to fill it in, but not too much. So you go like stuff everywhere, not overblown. To kind of it's a bit of that English reserve. I just keep something in reserve. Which gives it more emotional impact, more emotional punch. I think if you're trying to do that, and the second solo, as you say, more kind of bluesy, soulful feel that Jimmy Page does so well. And I think it's a great song. I gave it 10 out of 10. Never a skip. That's a fantastic opening to side 2. Yeah, love it. That was really good. That was a tremendous surprise to me, having not heard it before, in a good way. Andrew.
Yeah, I have to agree with you guys. I love that Northern English vocal, and I don't know where the guy's from, but that Lee Brillo, Dr. Feelgood vocal that he's got, which is a little bit of a contrast compared to the previous singer. I love it. I think it was a wonderful contrast to two things: the previous vocalist, obviously, but also the music that Page is doing on this side. I love the reverb, Brad, on the guitars and the chorus effect. I'm pretty sure there's a chorus thing going on parts of this track, and again, that's no surprise when you consider 88. The chorus is a pretty popular effect. That players are using. And clearly Page is a product of his time, so he's borrowing that chorus effect and putting it in here. The solo is high with glistening notes. I love the infused double stops and the vibrato. Again, we've got Page coming through here, so clearly we know it's him. And the bass on this track, again, and it's only when you do blues that the bass becomes a fundamental thing. You can do rock and roll without a bass, but there's lots of examples. But for a good blues track to come through, you got to have the bass, and we're getting that on this track. It gets better, ladies and gentlemen. I love the way that the bass especially backs up the solo guitar. On this track, it's with the bass's nice little runs. Love that. Starting to hear that come through, Brad. Love that little thing going on. Look, I've given this a 9.5 out of 10 too. I would have given it a 10, but there's a couple of other tracks. So, but 9.5, solid opener, and I got to agree with what the rock professor said. It's like wow, and after not hearing this for 10 years and listening to it, it was like, oh, wow. Yeah. Then I started to remember what's going on this album. 9.5
Before we go any further, I'll just, Holly, said Leon Russell wrote this song with Chris Farlowe. Chris Farlowe's a contemporary of the Rolling Stones from the 60s. He had a hit with Out of Time, #1 single in the UK in 66 with Out of Time. Version of the Rolling Stones song, and he was on Immediate Records, Andrew Lou Goldham's Immediate Records as well. But he's done lots of things since. He's still alive, 82 years old. So hats off to Chris Farlowe. He has a particular unique style and stuff, but worth checking out for sure. Sorry, just quick. He's born, and by the way, he's born in Islington, Andrew, not up north Islington. Well, North London anyway. Cool.
Well, the next track on the album is Emerald Eyes, and this one is one of my favorite acoustic numbers on the instrumental tracks on the album. Sorry, and the reason being because it's got some really lush acoustic vibes, and I love that. I love the tremolo guitar overdub. There's one little overdub there that just does all that little overdub.
Nice, yeah.
The drums are very dynamic and laid back on this song. The solo incorporates some very relaxed blues vibe, while underneath we hear some stellar acoustic guitar playing. This is the rhythm guitar track, And that's the highlight for me. I love that rhythm sort of playing under it. And something to be said about Jimmy Page as an acoustic guitar player. It's all well and good to sit there and strum an acoustic and whatnot, but Jimmy has quite a unique timing with his right hand and the way he plays guitar at the best of times. But on an acoustic, he employs like almost a drumming type thing where he's playing between like a kick and snare, his style of drumming, and he plays between it. He's just remarkable. His rhythm is very, it's easy to sit there and learn the parts, but it's hard to play them like Jimmy Page. And in true Led Zeppelin fashion, there's Jimmy Page employs electric guitars and acoustic guitars together and creates like an atmospheric and dynamic sort of feel to the music. Again, I love that tremolo guitar in the song, the overdub. I've copied that in some of my music in the past, putting that tremolo bum, 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 like sort of fades out almost every time it comes through. And how the song ends is just wonderful with that sort of same thing, that tremolo guitar. This is my favorite instrumental on the album, guys, and I have to give it 10 out of 10. It's a great. It's a great introduction to some acoustic guitar to the album, and I think Jimmy Page needs to be recognised as an amazing acoustic player. Simon,
yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that there's a whole chapter to be written about Jimmy Page, the acoustic guitar player, isn't it? With his different tunings and feel of his acoustic playing is really good. Taken clearly from John Renbourn and Bert Jansch and those guys, but making it his own and introducing that, and it has always been that kind of alternative tuning things and bringing that into the mainstream, which I think is fantastic. And this, like you said, you said it, Bram. I think one thing I'd say is the acoustic sounds really good, doesn't it? He knows how to record a good acoustic, does Jimmy? Where to put the mics, how to get that sound that really makes it full-bodied and fills out the sound and things. Again, not putting too much on. A bit of tremolo, as you said, tremolo electric, and but actually, a bit of some snappy drums and but not quite a lot of space. Giving it all the instruments room to breathe and stuff. So, and as you've said, that kind of solo, that bluesy, soaring solo that he does at about 147, it's fantastic. Really good. I give this an 8.5 out of 10. Never a skip. I like vocals. it is really good though. It's Andrew.
It's an incredible acoustic number, isn't it? With some interesting effects going on. And again, I keep repeating myself, and Brad's mentioned it too a few times. The layering of effects that adds depth to this track is just phenomenal. Go and listen to it with your AirPods or your headphones or whatever. It's a remarkable piece of music. Page's solo again is delicate. It's a delicate thing, and it suits the song well. Again, a classic Page thing. I've got to agree with what Brad said, about Page being an acoustic guitar player extraordinaire. We've seen so many examples of it through his career with Led Zeppelin. We got teased, so many times about how great these guys were. We did Led Zeppelin 3 recently, the so-called acoustic album, which had some great tracks. This guy knows what he's doing. It's a big part of who these guys are as electric guitar players. This acoustic thing, going back to that skiffle thing that he started off doing, playing on acoustic guitars. It's how he learnt the craft. So, and it comes through. That passion comes through on this wonderful piece. I love it. Look, I've given this a 9.5 out of 10 too. That far away from being a 10 out of 10, but Brad, 9.5. I just think the adding of the acoustic track here is just a perfect spot for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I'm really glad he introduced a bit of acoustic to the album, even though it's got electric guitar with it. But again, like the blending of the two, the electric and acoustic, is wonderful at doing. So we're up to the next song, and it's called Prison Blues. And if we thought we had a wonderful bluesy vibe happening with Hummingbird, then strap yourself in, because this Prison Blues is 8 minutes long, or whatever it is. Of
7:10.
It was nearly 8 minutes long. It's getting there, and it's great. It's just got some fantastic guitar playing, and it starts off with that really raunchy guitar tone and those dual bends that are going on. His playing on this is amazing. Chris Farlow, he enforces that he's been a bad boy. He tells us he's been a bad boy a lot, all night long, and he sings with conviction. I love how Jimmy responds, like the call and response thing he's got going with Chris there. There's some sleazy blues playing going on here. This is where Jimmy Page really becomes infectious as a player to me. You can't stop wanting to hear his flutter of blues, the way he plays, his technique. I love how bare bones this song is. It's just bass. I think it's just bass, drums, and guitar and vocals. Don't think I can hear anything else in it. There's no overdubs. I think Jimmy Page alluded to they did 2 takes of this. This is probably one of the takes that they decided was the best one live, and it's apparent. It's the one thing with Jimmy's guitar playing through this song is he knows when to give space and when to dig in hard and then to back off again wonderfully. He does that all the way through this song. He does that. Not many guitar players understand that style of playing as well. I mean, it's something that Jimmy is trademarked for, in my opinion. 2 minutes 33 with some blistering guitar playing from Jimmy, and he lays back around 2 minutes 50. I think 2 minutes 50. Then he holds back with some raking those strings again. The way he does that ring, ding, 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 like the way he does that. That technique he does is just, it gives me goosebumps. I love how he does that. The solo definitely is unscripted. It's not planned. It's just pure emotion and feel. And that's when Jimmy plays his best, in my opinion. It's a feast of Les Paul. If you love Les Pauls, if you love, what, this side? No, this side? This side?
Who doesn't?
This side?
Yeah, that one. Yeah. Anyway, that one. Yes, that one.
Well, you love these things. You're going to love this track. It's a, look, 10 out of 10 for me, never a skip. Simon.
Yes, this is son of Since I've Been Loving You, isn't it? In many ways, in that kind of, and Page's, I think, unmatched ability to play a long, slow blues like this, and make it dynamic, make it interesting, make it melodic, make it all those things that he can do, and doing it live, live in the studio, just off we go, and it's one of the great tracks on this album for sure. One of my, I was, again, because I haven't heard, if I ever heard it in the 80s, I don't remember, but coming back to it now, and just when he starts off, as you say, that kind of jump, and off he goes, and you go, wow, listen to that, and drawn in completely. And I think that that goes really well with Chris Farlow singing. Chris Farlow, they definitely got that simpatico thing going on where I think Chris Farlow really makes the other half of this, in the same way that Plant makes the other half of Since I've Been Loving You. In terms of vocal performance, how somebody can just do all of that in 7 minutes, over 7 minutes, and kind of make it consistently interesting, passionate, lyrical, melodic. I'm blown away as ever by Jimmy Page in the way that he can do that stuff, and I think it's like nobody else really. He's made it a unique thing, and it's fantastic to hear him do that again, that kind of slow blues thing, with all that space, as you say, Brad, pretty much probably live in, definitely live in the studio, one take, goes through, and you go, yeah, I don't know many other people who could do that, frankly. I want to, in a sense, have the confidence to do it. I think some of it's just about having the confidence to do it. As you say, Les Paul Fest. It's a 10 out of 10 for me, never a skip. 100 out of 10, it's a fantastic track, and I've really enjoyed. It's really enjoyed listening to it and getting drawn into it as well. Andrew.
Yeah, it was my fave back in the day. It was a fave. Again, with all my mates, we played this blues in A. If you knew how to play blues, if you knew the blues pattern, Simon, you could play along with it, and it was fantastic. And we did it, after 6 beers, and it sounded great, Simon.
After 6 beers,
it's great, Brad.
Yeah.
And maybe other things. I don't know. Classic, isn't it? It's a classic song. That first short solo is wow. It's just remarkable. We get some bass, as I mentioned. The bass is coming through as an instrument on this side. I love that. At the 3:20 mark, all I can say is hail Jimmy Page. Brad's mentioned it before. It's a Les Paul fest. It's a guitar fest. It's just fantastic. It's interesting. Again, I've got to reminisce and sort of say where they could have gone with this thing.
Yeah.
They could have gone on and done something else. I don't know. Clearly it was a thing that Page wanted to do, Brad. Clearly, and we'll talk about this maybe in the conclusion of the identity of Page as a musician and a performer and a guitarist and a man where his roots are. I've given this a Brad score. With the whole price of the album, the 7 minutes, Brad. I just think it's phenomenal. Love it. Highlight of the album.
Yeah, I agree. And all I can say is after that song, you definitely get a weasel in your pocket.
Yes.
I'll move on. So we're up to the last track of the album, and it's called Blues Anthem. And what a wonderful way to end the album. This beautiful acoustic playing from Jimmy Page on the 12-string has a very folksy feel to it. Chris Farlow sings wonderfully on it. Great vocal melody. That's what I've written here. Once again, the way the drums come in. Once the drums come in, the song sort of takes off. It feels reminiscent of Jimmy Page's work on the Death Wish 2 soundtrack to me. It's got a bit of that vibe to it. And quite possibly this song chord structure or whatever Jimmy had may have come from that era. Who knows? But the 1 minute 56 we've treated to one of my favorite Jimmy Page guitar solos of all time. I love the solo in this song. There's so much emotion in his playing. He plays perfectly for the song. And I think it's a wonderful way to end the record. It sort of feels like a real fresh energy to end the song, end the album. For that reason alone, just his guitar solo in this, I'm a massive Jimmy Page nut, as you know. And I have to give this a 10 out of 10 as well. It's never a skip for me, guys. The solo alone in this song is worth 10 out of 10. Simon.
Well done.
Yes, I mean, I think that the chord structure is quite a standard thing. I think I think that it's nice acoustic strumming. Chris Farlow singing, really good, great singing again. Why they didn't do more, I've no idea, but seemed to work really well on this side 2 of this record. Is him and Mr. Farlow. I love the strings as well. I think that that string arrangement that he does is really great, and a beautiful melodic soaring solo. I'll tell you what it reminded me of. As soon as it started, it reminds me of later period Bob Dylan. If you listen to Time Out of Mind or something like that, if you go to those records, you listen to that. It could be, but it could be a Bob Dylan song. It absolutely could be a Bob Dylan song. But 15, what was it, 88, 98? Yeah, 10 years before that. So I guess the thing. But that it did remind me of that very much. And I love later period Bob Dylan. So it's a lovely way to end the album, kind of bookend, acoustic number. 10 out of 10 for me, and never a skip. Really great, great song. Loved it, Andrew.
Tim, Food, and R2, good to see you guys. Thanks for hanging out with us. Blues Anthem, Brad, is exactly what the title says or is.
That's what it says on the tin.
Makes any sense.
Yes.
It's a cool opening phrase, and I love the flurry of notes that we've got there on the chorus. It's just fantastic. Again, a wonderful little guitar effect technique that Page adds to it. Chris embraces the topic when he sings. It's a mournful song. And if you don't love the blues, if you're a young guy listening to this in 88, it's certainly going to be an experience for you. And in my memory, it was for a couple of guys. They were rockers, Brad.
Yep.
And sort of listening to this album for a couple of my friends sort of paved the way to them. I was lucky enough to have a couple of uncles educate me a little bit earlier in the blues. But I do certainly remember a couple of my friends going, "Hey, this is interesting," And then I remember one good friend of mine, David McCall, going from this to the Standard, the blues guy at the time, George Thorogood, and trying to get some credibility by saying he was George, and we say, "Yeah, okay, he'll do. George Thorogood will do." Okay. Gateway song. Again, and and it's one of the great things about Page and Plant and Led Zeppelin, isn't it? They love the blues, and it's part of who Jimmy Page is as a musician, and the fact that he's ended this solo album with 2 blues numbers clearly is an indication of who he is as a musician and as a performer. Simon, I love it. I've given this a Brad score.
Yeah.
Hey.
Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you both for allowing me to do this album, because I really enjoyed hearing you guys discuss it. It's been great.
Yeah, it's a great album, but it's better than I thought it was going to be in many ways. Particularly, and I like the contrast between the two sides. I think as well, the John Miles
Big
stuff,
time.
and on the rock side is side one, and the more kind of expand, the stuff with Chris Farlow, I think works incredibly well as a side two, and the contrast between the two, and keeping them separate as well. I think that was a really cool. So you got Robert Plant and John Miles on one, that much more rock thing, and then these other things, bluesy kind of things on side two. I think it's a great bit of programming. To put all those tracks and understand how those tracks fit together, and that's the way to do it. So really enjoyed it, Brad. So thank you for that. It's fantastic. Yeah, really enjoyed it.
Can I share a conversation that I had a couple of days ago with you guys?
Go for it.
Yep.
So a good friend of mine who watches what we do here, bit of a rocker. I know him through business. Led Zeppelin fan, didn't know anything about this album. Came into work, we were talking about it. He's, said he was going to check it out. And he said something really interesting, and I don't want to sound like negative or I don't know, but I'll come out and say it. He said something really interesting. He said, everybody knows Led Zeppelin stuff, Andrew. And I said, yeah. And he said, Page is alive and no one knows any of the solo stuff that he did. And I said to him, Coverdale Page. And he goes, yeah, I remember that. Showed him the album. Oh, yeah. And I said, we're going to be doing that soon. when the anniversary edition comes out, and he's, you know, the Ferb and all this kind of stuff, and he said, you know, people don't talk about this because he's still alive. And I said, yeah, you're right. And he said, so, you know, when people pass, when musicians and guitar players pass, that's when people renegotiate their whole back catalogue. And I said, yeah. He said, well, you know, good on you guys for doing it while he's still alive.
Yeah,
well, look,
pretty cool.
If we encourage anyone to go and have a listen to this album, then we've done our job. That's great.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
And,
I would not have listened to this album, Brad, had you not mentioned it. You know, because we can't listen to every album that we grew up with, can we, Simon? you know.
No, we can't.
I would not have listened to this album had you not mentioned it.
Yep.
Yeah. So you know, thanks for that, because it brought back a whole lot of memories, and it's like, oh wow, you know, especially listening to the previous song, the second song, you know, oh gosh, Prison Blues, you know.
Yeah.
And after playing rugby and drinking beer and playing the song was just great. Thanks, Brad. You know,
well,
loved it.
I've got a you know, a weasel in my pocket. No, no, I was joking.
That's funny, isn't it? It's just funny.
You know, I've got my Les Pauls out, and because of this album, I've just been, you know, with everything I've been through over the last 12 months. It's coming up to 12 months now. This album's actually helped me get back into playing that Les Paul style blues, and I love it.
Yep.
So it's something that as a young guy listening to Page, anything to do with Jimmy Page excited me, and I still get excited. So it's great.
Yeah,
it's a good work.
Yeah.
And thanks to everyone watching and the great comments. And if anyone's watching this that hasn't subscribed, please do so. Obviously, we're trying to get to that 10K mark now. We're not
magic
far off.
10K.
Yeah, we picked up a few subscribers because of Eric over the last week. So thanks, Eric, for that.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. And and also I've dusted off Warren's pewter grey Stratocaster, and I'm going to be doing a little bit more with that. Hopefully, I'll share some stuff on Instagram with that too. So
fantastic, cool.
Yeah.
If you guys thought we were excited when Outrider came out, just imagine what happened when Coverdale Page came out.
Oh, I think I might have even said this to you guys. I waited outside the record store for them to open.
You did, yes.
And they weren't.
I was going to say. Yeah, I was going to say that, or you took time off work, you wagged work or something. Yeah,
I waited, and to be honest with you, they weren't going to put it out till lunchtime, and they got angry with me because I demanded that they went and opened the damn box and got it out for me.
Yeah,
I argued with them. I said, it's due out today, and I'm here. I've been waiting for an hour out the front in the cold. You got to bring it out now, you know.
Yeah, not waiting till 12 o'clock.
Oh, mate, because I was meant to be on the shelves. You know, I thought this is the next big thing since Led Zeppelin. And, I'm really excited about doing that album at some point. But who knows when that remaster will be done, because I've read something just recently saying that it's nothing's sort of moved forward with that for a little while. So we don't know. We'll see.
Well, you know what Jimmy Page is like. If Jimmy Page is involved in it, he wants to probably get it perfect.
Yeah, maybe he's stalling or something like that. But God bless Jimmy Page. I hope he releases something not too distant future of a lot of the song ideas he's been working on over the last God knows how long. I've heard demos of stuff he's done with Michael Lee on drums, all sorts of stuff. I'd love to hear what, even if it was an acoustic album, it doesn't matter. I'd love to hear it. It'd be fantastic.
Yeah. Who's got the pick for next week? Is it the Rock Professor?
I'm not sure, Andrew. I'm not sure.
Where is he? Making a cup of tea, is he? Oh, we'll sort that out. We'll sort that out.
It's you, Mr. Walton.
Oh.
I love how Simon just slid in there and goes, "It's you, Mr. Walton."
It's you, Mr. Walton.
Okay, I'll have to. I might keep it. related to something similar to what we've just been talking about over the last couple of days. We're not going to detract our attention too far off the subject on this channel over the next couple of weeks anyway. I'll talk to you guys about it. We'll get together. We'll hatch a plan. Please make sure that you hit the notification button so that when we put that up, the album that we're going to do, follow Brad on Instagram. There he is there on the bottom there. Brad Cook Music. Easy. The Rock Professor Simon Williams 33 on Instagram. Brad always puts a post, a countdown. The final countdown to the album that we're going to be doing.
And Andrew's is the 5150 show with underscores in there. So just check that out. Keep following that and helping us grow that one up. There it is. The underscore 5150 underscore show.
Rock and roll.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Yes. I'll say thanks to Holly, Ellen, Jonas Halberg as well. Jonas, thanks so much for joining. R2R3, Third Berfel. Sorry, Third, I'm butchering your name. Tim Thomas, rolling back up, we had R2R3. Good to see you, R2R3. Hope you're good. We had Arvin, of course, and Holly and Ellen. Lots of comments there. Gret Zeppelin, John ZD351.
Nelson.
There's Nelson. Hello, has Nelson popped in as well?
Yes.
Morning, Nelson. Yes, Nelson. How you doing? Good to see you. Going back up, Robert Ranford as well. Surprised he had to go to bed. Simtree. Yes, all those people. Hopefully I've got everybody. So thanks all for joining. Fantastic to see you all and for your support. And we'll see you next week for another jolly ranking the tracks of something. Take it away, boss.
While other channels ranked albums, we deep dived every track on your favorite album.
Hopefully.
All right. You got that?
Yeah. Yes, boss. We got it.
The home of ranking the tracks. Thank you guys for supporting us. There's another one there. The home of ranking the tracks and album deep dives. And that's what the Rock Professor gets up to after the show.
He's getting ready for his deck tonight.
He's definitely got some weasels in his pocket there, bro.
He's not afraid to use it.
And because Brad picked this album, there's the end clickbait there, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, look at the guns on that.
Yes, so I've got to get healthy to get back to the gym. All right, guys.
And remember, we're the only channel that uses our own clickbait too. Remember that. we don't get bimbos from, we use our own bimbos.
Thanks. Is that complimentary to Brad? I don't know whether it is or not.
We've got weasels in our pockets and we're not afraid to use
them. Canoes. Right. Quick.
We better go before people start going, what's going on here? What's going on?
Hit it, boss. Hit it. Take it away.